Welcome to Diagnosing Dx, the podcast giving diagnostics the platform it deserves. While therapeutics and devices often take centre stage, diagnostics is the engine driving precision medicine. I'm your host, David Filby, and each week we spotlight the innovators, breakthroughs, and real-world challenges shaping the future of DX. 98% of cancer patients outside the US aren't receiving the genomic testing that could give them access to targeted therapies. This week I'm joined by Travis Wold, CEO of Imagenomix, who believe AI could fundamentally change that. We discuss how Imagenomix can analyse a standard cancer slide and predict mutations in minutes, why cost, tissue and turnaround time still restrict access to precision oncology, and whether AI could ultimately help bring targeted cancer treatment to patients anywhere in the world. Welcome to the show this week, Travis. How are you?
Great. Thank you, David. Appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. And where in the world are you?
Right now, I'm in Jacksonville, Florida.
Lovely. Are you watching the World Cup?
A little bit, mainly the highlights. So it's been kind of a fun couple weeks here. I've seen a lot of excitement.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. It's awesome every time the World Cup comes around. So it's great that it's in North America and getting around.
Are you going
really
to any games?
Definitely not. When I see the price, the price of tickets.
Yeah.
Justifying that to the wife might be a tough one. But yeah, it gets the whole country going. I think we've got quite a lot to get into today. I'm actually really excited because it sort of feels like what Imagenomix are doing is at the forefront of everything that's really interesting and exciting in the industry at the moment. But I think before we do that, because what's equally as exciting is some of the experiences you've been through in your career, I'd love to get a bit more into your background, your career, what you've been doing up until now, and sort of you introduce yourself.
So born and raised in Alaska. I'm half Alaskan native. Grew up in a small fishing town where they do that show Dangerous Catch. So everyone asks if I still like fishing, and I say, not if I have to, since I was on the boats for hours and hours a day in the cold water and pulling in nets all the time. But, it was a good experience coming from that and really learning about what free healthcare looks like, right? In the Alaska Native system, you have the Indian Health Services and you get quote unquote free healthcare. And we appreciate it and it's good until you get into the advanced diseases where you need more advanced testing, more advanced medications. Then you're really looking at only generics, right? And that extends out past that. So, our passion at Imagenomix and when we came out with our mission statement is, cancer genetic testing for everyone. Alaska is just a snapshot of my background into all the LMIC countries out there that don't get any mutation targeted testing to be put on a targeted cancer therapy to help fight their cancer, right? The testing's really expensive. You need it to be put on those drugs. So using Imagenomix AI in the beginning, just as a screening tool, rule in, rule out mutations for a very inexpensive price until we can potentially get CDX on some of these mutations, is one way to allow more access globally to cancer patients. So that spoke home to me from where I'm from and my background. And, trying to answer that question actually answers a much bigger question outside of just small Alaska. Yeah.
So that's interesting. So your background in rural Alaska is a really good insight into a challenge across the country that is really common, the access to a better standard of care for patients, which shouldn't be concentrated in big cities like New York and so forth, where healthcare is probably really advanced and robust. So this is a personal experience that you've got growing up there that's actually motivated you to come on board.
Yeah, and it's really encouraging. I mean, to be in this timeline and having this type of technology being advanced and being able to bring this out of the NYU Langone laboratories to the rest of the world is super exciting to see. There's already great targeted therapies out there. AstraZeneca, Pfizer. There's so many, that Eli Lilly, they have great targeted therapies. Just not enough patients are gaining access to them because they have that mutational fence, if you will, right? Until you get that testing, you don't get to cross. So being able to identify more of those and giving access to more targeted therapies to fight those cancers is what we're really passionate about at Imagenomix.
Interesting. So take us back to what you did in your career before Imagenomix
Yeah.
and up until you taken the role and now your current role with Imagenomix.
Yeah, I started off in sales, got into that portion and moved into Florida where, it's a much bigger market, and eventually licensed a technology out of Northwestern. So friend Sam Zhang and I launched a company out of there. It was a multiplex PCR for H. pylori. We did really well. We sold that in late 2010. And at the time, one of my current mentors, Bonnie Anderson, was starting a company called Veracyte, and they were about to commercialize. And I met her and Chris Hall, the now president of Personalis, and Rick Landman, the former CMO of Guardant, who was at Veracyte too. So we had a really nice pedigree there. And it was just an amazing company. And I learned so much there on, being able to rule in, rule out patients out of thyroid surgery and their commercialization models. But during that time there, I was able to also launch the international markets. And it was very difficult. We were working with 44 countries, but they just couldn't afford any of this type of genetic testing. My next company I went over to was a company called Circulogene in the liquid biopsy space doing NGS. And we got the cost down for the countries to $1,000 per test. They said, if you can get the cost down to $1,000 per test, we're going to send you hundreds per week. We'll get ministry coverage, et cetera, et cetera. And so we trialed it, right? We did it for 6 months and we got 2 tests per month. They still couldn't afford it at even $1,000 per test with the masses for their cancer population. So AI, I think, is going to be a beautiful entry point for a lot of these countries and patients to have access, even if it's just a screening tool in the beginning that rules in, rules out the mutations, and you test the population that has a high percentage towards having a potential mutation, like an EGFR or a KRAS, a PIK3CA, right? Like they're still rare. They're 25% and under, but countries can't afford to test everybody, right? Because you run out of your budget really quickly. But can you use an inexpensive screening tool for, $50 to $100 to rule in, rule out those patients, enrich that population, and then pay for that more expensive NGS testing, right? So that's our goal right now at Imagenomix until AI is a caught up tool to where it could actually replace some of the NGS. But NGS is a great tool at this point. We actually think early on AI will expand the usage of NGS because of the rule in, rule out methods that we're utilizing to just enrich that pool of positives. So we can turn up the sensitivity and instead of them testing 1,000 out of 1,000 NGS for thousands of dollars, maybe they only test 200 to have a very high likelihood of having those mutations, right? So for countries that have those budgets, that opens it up for them to allow more patients to go on these targeted therapies for their particular cancer.
Okay, so in that example of working with a country that you've had to work hard to get the cost down, which still allows you, the product to be profitable and as a business to thrive, and they ultimately have ended up giving you such low volume at 2 a month. You're saying that actually Imagenomix sits before that NGS test because it's a screening test, but with the right screening, you can actually improve the volume of NGS because there's a much more likelihood that NGS test is going to show what needs to be showed. So countries and healthcare systems are going to look at that and go, we've already been screened. We've taken a certain population of patients down to a very high likelihood, and therefore we should be now running NGS on this. So actually volume of NGS should then go up in that screened population.
Yeah, and because you think about it, there's a few problems right now. One is cost of the NGS. The second, turnaround time. So most clinical trials fail in oncology just from turnaround time, right? 2 to 3 weeks minimum, depending on how they ship out the sample to the laboratory. Did it pass the first time and yield a result the first trial? Um, about 25% of NGS samples are QNS, or quantity not sufficient. So, the physicians go in with a fine needle aspiration into the lung, into the breast. They collect just enough tissue to call that a cancer, and maybe a little bit more, right? Then you go through an H&E process, an IHC process, maybe multiple stain slides on that tissue block. So by the time it gets off to the next gen sequencing, the NGS portion, 25% don't have enough tissue. Where Imagenomix layers in is once they build that H&E slide, which is on 100% of confirmed cancer cases globally, right? So this is something that can scale globally, not just in the US. We can then just run that off the scanner, the image. We work with multiple scanner companies, and then we yield a result in about 1 to 2 minutes.
Wow. And so you've come in as the CEO of the company.
Yeah.
What attracted you to the company, and how did that come about? But also, how did it come about taking the IP out of NYU Langone?
Yeah, really good question. I had met one of the founders during COVID. They had Matthias Nuderl. He's fantastic, and he created a 500 gene plus panel that's FDA approved, and they could get the cost down quite a bit on that panel. And I thought maybe that was the answer to go international and even domestically on some of these NGS panels, right? Just to keep costs down on them, even in clinical trials. But what we realized over time is that still wasn't the answer on that portion, because staffing the laboratories is very expensive. Running a NGS lab, it's expensive. So even if you can get reagent costs down, you still have the HR, you have all the people, you have the machinery. Like, it's not scalable into LMIC countries. You think about Africa, India, et cetera. Like, that requires a lot of specialized personnel. AI requires a scanner. We're now testing a $500 camera that goes onto a microscope from a company called Vitruvian. Verge Health Tech Fund out of Singapore introduced us to them, one of their other partner companies. So we're trialing this inexpensive camera that goes onto microscopes. And then secondarily, we're looking at potential what's called stitching off cell phone camera images. We got to continually go down from a FDA approved type Philips scanner that's very good, super high resolution, and then we're going to try out the Vitruvian camera. And then we'll see if we can do this off just simple cell phone images eventually. That would be scalable globally, right? The problem you end up having, even with scanners, sending those into different countries all over the world, is they have to be fixed and they have to be operated, right? So that's a tough portion of scaling globally, which is how we think about this. Is we want to start off with these small projects, but all of them are being built to be globally scaled.
And so, how did that happen in terms of you coming on board to Imagenomix?
Right, yeah. So I met Mattia and them. They had this story, and it was exactly that, right? We want to be able to offer mutational testing to the masses. Inside the US, only about 25% of lung, breast, and colon get tested. And those are the top three. The rest are below that, right? Outside of the US, 98% do not receive any NGS testing, or which would lead to targeted therapy, right? So that 98% is a really high number. And so if we can start to solve that portion, that's really our biggest goal. And that's why I came over to Imagenomix, is that was their passion, is can we solve this just off a simple H&E? I went to Mattia and them. They published the first paper in 2018, right? And it was in lung. So then they filed the patents on this, which were granted in 2022. And that's what I thought was really powerful about this, is they had the expertise around it, but they also had the patents on this as well.
Wow. And so your experience with multiple exits in your career as well, and the commercial background you have, did that feel like a really natural fit there in terms of what they bring to the table and already had, and what you could bring to the table as a business plan from here?
Yeah, yeah, I fit in really well. I mean, my whole background has been, in the cancer therapeutics and also international markets. And I look at it, I got so lucky in my career leading up to this. The other portion that was part of the passion project for me is they came to me originally for gliomas and brain cancer um, mutations. And so we have a product called NeuroInsight that's for IDH1, IDH2. IDH2 doesn't have a really good IHC around it. So immediately we would add 15% market share to uh, a couple companies that already have IDH drugs out. And our initial studies in that show that we're better than the IHC very quickly. And my father passed away of a glioma brain cancer. He never got any testing for any of this, right? So when they came to me for that, that really piqued my interest. Um, the, and that'll be a future product. Right now, we're going after lung and breast. Those are the bigger markets. They have the most targeted mutational therapies. So we're going to start there because we can access the most amount of data there. And then we want to go into the brain cancer side as well.
And so what data have you been able to gather so far, and clinical trials and studies that you've been able to gather?
Yeah, so a lot of what we're doing right now in preparation for a July launch has been utilizing retrospective samples with NGS Truth. So, for instance, we talked to some of the potential pharma partners in our pipeline. We have access to a lot of these samples. And so we'll run our algorithms on them and let them know first in a pilot study, can we pick this up or not? Some are really easy to pick up, some are really difficult. So if they're difficult, we let them know that and say, hey, we can either try this again and access more, or this is just not a good target at this time. Like, let's pass on this. But if they do pass through our QC process and we find that we can find these targets, that's a good targeted marker. So we're working on 3 right now to be launched later this year.
And so what is the story up until now as a company? You mentioned the patents, and then obviously you've come on board. What's happened so far in terms of capital raise, growth, and commercialization or partnerships that you already have in place?
Yeah, good question. So we raised recently, Modi Ventures led a round with Sahir and his brother Amir Ali with Modi Ventures. They're fantastic. They put us into their pipeline. They actually have a channel partner for us called Path Presenter. Path Presenter is an image management system that is in a ton of hospitals globally, right? And so Path Presenter is an image, they hold all these images. And so they have hundreds of thousands of lung cancers, right? So they have all this breadth. But what's on those? We don't know. So Imagenomix will give depth to those lung, breast, eventually melanomas, brain. So we can give a lot more access to the data on what exactly is being held in those images. That's important for future studies. It's important for targeting. You can know which areas of the country are having more of this particular mutation. It's important for targeting. There's so many things that you can extrapolate once you know a lot of this data inside just a lung cancer or a breast cancer. Like, what's below that, right?
Interesting. And have you set up other partnerships or had commercial traction elsewhere?
Yeah. So again, on the image management side, the way we view them is almost like an iPhone with limited apps at this point. Path Presenter, Proscia, there's a few others out there, but Proscia, we're also working very closely with because they have a very large image management. They have a lot of images with NGS Truth, right? So we did a 3-year deal with Proscia to start developing a lot of our products there. They also have a centralized application where people can go in, pick the applications that they want, the pathologists. So eventually on lung cancers, not only will it load into the Proscia system, but they can also utilize the Imagenomix Predict. Our particular one in lungs called Pulmogene, which will be the first one launched with Proscia in July. So now pathologists, pharma, biobanks, they'll all have access to pulmogene to identify EGFR, KRAS, TP53, et cetera, et cetera. We have probably about 6 genes that we'll put in. Those 3 will be the first: EGFR, KRAS, TP53. And now you can start utilizing these as a screening tool right away. So that's the way we view a lot of these partnerships is, there's image management systems with Philips, Proscia, Path Presenter, Indica, et cetera. They need more applications to make them more robust in that pathology workflow. And Imagenomix is just one of those applications in the cancer side on lung and breast to start that can help with those workflows.
So because of where you guys sit in the workflow and in clinical workflows, how does the product development look and things like regulatory pathway, reimbursement? How do those things play into a product like this?
Really good question. In the beginning, we're going to start as an inexpensive screening tool, right? That does not need FDA clearance because we're not a diagnostic at this time. Our view on this is that AI is not quite ready to be a diagnostic in most of the disease states for mutational analysis in cancer. There needs to be a lot more studies and validation first. So we think doing this as a rule in, rule out screening tool in the beginning is going to be the most powerful way to build up enough of that data to where you can eventually get this to where it could have a CDX indication and reimbursement. So it's all about, is it worth it, right? Monetarily, it's worth it because what we know is we can rule out anywhere from 70 to 80% of samples in lung and breast right now today, right? That do not need NGS testing for those particular mutations we're looking for, okay? And these are the most common 5 or 6 in breast and lung cancer. Mm-hmm. We know we can do that today. We know we can call positives and turn the specificity up in our testing, but there still needs to be a lot of trials that go on with the AI side to develop trust, especially with oncology pathology. That's a long window of trust. So we view this as screening until we have enough proof, there's enough studies, and then we can start going after the reimbursement and the CDX. In the interim, it would be codes to reimburse for screening tools. There are some out there right now, but they're not being reimbursed. So the codes are established, but they're not being reimbursed at this time.
So there is still a goal to go down that path and ultimately, yeah, okay. You said at this point AI isn't ready to be a full diagnostic. I was going to say, do you see that becoming, but I think that there's an obvious answer to that. It's probably a better question is how long or how far away do you think we are from AI being, the full diagnostic package?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know that it'll be the full diagnostic package, but even over the past year, from 2 years ago to a year ago, there were significant advancements in what we're doing with the AI. From a year ago to now, you just feel and see the acceleration go even faster. So it was kind of like here and then it starts shooting up, right? So I don't have an accurate time window because it's moving so quickly.
Yeah.
The partnerships that we're working on, what we're doing alone is not going to answer a lot of the questions that I think in the future could be. So responders, non-responders, right? So you utilize Imagenomix in the future. You're like, hey, this is an EGFR or a KRAS. But then even though you've identified that mutation and the targeted therapy is queued up, there's non-responders, even though they have those mutations, right? We don't know why. But we're talking to a couple of companies that we're going to be partnering with shortly to actually look at the 3D, 4D cell structure and figure out which ones will be responders and non-responders. So what you want to look at is, here's the mutation. Will they respond to the drug or not, right? That's going to be kind of this next step layer, is not just catching it, but what are they going to react to the best to get rid of that cancer, stop that cancer from continuing to expand.
Because of that, do you see the commercial pathway in partnering with pharma companies, biotech companies to help conduct trials and develop their therapeutics? Does that become stronger versus being a screening tool, used in live, ongoing patient workflows and journeys?
Yeah, good question. And that's that type of advancement. If we can make that work and show that not only the mutation is there, but this patient will respond, not respond. That's that next big hockey stick,
Right.
right? And because that's what that's what the treating physicians want. Is great. The mutation's there. Are they going to respond or not? Right? Because right now they're like, hey, the data says they have a 75% response rate, so we're going to try it on this. They're just making some numbers up. But now, if we can actually do this and say, hey, it's an EGFR mutation, and they're going to have a healthy response to this based on our data, like that's really powerful. Or, hey,
Yeah.
they have these particular mutations, and they're going to be a non-responder with these EGFR medications. We need to go a different route. Like that starts to tailor the therapies even more, but it also gives us a better understanding of what the AI is seeing, right? Because what AI is doing off these, you can't pick up with your eye, so it's picking up something, and we know what those patterns are and what it's picking up now. But in the beginning, you don't. You just put in truth, NGS truth, and it comes out with this prediction. You're like, I wonder how it did that, right? And now we know how it's doing that. But over time, as you look at spatial and you look at these 3D, 4D images, you can now predict response. And we think that's going to be the next layer of Imagenomix. We don't know how far out that is. The companies we're talking to have already proven this out. So now what we're trying to do is do this off in a single H&E slide with us plus them. And if we can do that over this next year, which is our plan, that'd be a really powerful tool for drug trials, treatment selection. There's so many applications that could answer off a simple H&E that's made everywhere in the world.
That's super exciting. I feel like everyone talks about AI and how it's going to change the world, and I think precision medicine is arguably the biggest winner from AI if we get it right, because what it has the ability to do, and exactly what you've just explained, the difference between average therapies being prescribed and see how it goes to being completely precise with specific therapies is such a big improvement on where we currently are. Let me ask you this: as a company, if I was to come into the company for a week, would I leave feeling you are an AI company, like a tech AI company, or would I leave feeling you're a diagnostics company?
That's a really good question. I think we're really a good blend of both because, all the AI tools we're using, we want patient advancement eventually, right? So it leans into that diagnostic, and, we all come from a diagnostic background on the medical side, aside from our AI team. And so diagnostics are still really important to us, right? And diagnostic lab testing drives about 70% of medical decisions out there. So can we help diagnostic testing that's currently out there advance just a little bit more? Like that's the goal right now with Imagenomix. And eventually you start getting CDX. That's where a lot of this will end up going, and drug tailoring. There's so much that AI is going to be able to answer that we're seeing right now. But it's still about a year away from us launching some of the testing that I think will really transform diagnostics, if you will.
So the next year is heavily focused on these partnerships and the access to samples that you can get, and therefore more data, more proof of concept. Will you at some point need to raise more capital as those sort of milestones get closer and you need to sort of ultimately expand and truly commercialize?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So probably in about 12 months, we have a 2-year runway right now. But probably in about 12 months, we'll start at the Series A. So we have our goals right now to start monetizing our platform. We've already got great partnerships to do that. But we have another couple of tests coming out that we are applying for our patents for here shortly. And as soon as we do that, one of them could be a blockbuster FDA breakthrough type of diagnostic AI test. And that we're planning on launch or announcing that in October, to be determined. We're working on this right now to see what timelines we can do, but essentially we'll be able to work on, or we have a test coming out in recurrence that doesn't exist yet.
Mm. And so you see this as ultimately once the first test is already being used. So you see this the expansion of the algorithm into other indications and other patients' challenges that you can solve.
Yeah, and we're really good at lung, really good at breast, really good at glioma. And there's a million companies out there, and there should be more. We get this question all the time, and there's so many questions that need to be answered right now. And the AI portion of this is so young. There could be hundreds of these companies answering different questions in pathology. We're partnering with 3 right now that everyone thought were competitors of ours, but they're actually just channel partners that answer different questions than we do. And there's a lot more synergies there than competition.
Mm. With your diagnostics background, what's been the most interesting learning curve you've had to come in as a CEO of what is really an AI company?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I think a couple of things that were so surprising to me is, at the wet labs, you have tons of employees,
Mm.
right? All to yield one test result. And at Imagenomix, we can do this with 3 people, right?
Wow.
And we have 5 now. We're coming up on 7 here shortly. But we don't need as many people. And that was the biggest eye-opening portion for me. The second was just understanding how it's a continuous puzzle, which our team continually works on every single week on Monday, Thursday during our calls. And it's really exciting to hear, okay, here's the questions we have. Here's the thought process around how we're going to address these. Here's the people that we're going to call to validate some of this as well. And then here's our plan on moving this forward, right? It's such an exciting time to start to figure out some of these questions that haven't been answered yet, and advancing diagnostics, if you will, versus just selling a Me Too type test.
Yeah, love it. Love
Yeah.
it. What are the future plans and milestones that we should really look out for the people that want to follow the story?
Yeah, really good question. So one of the metrics that we are going to start measuring, and this came out of Verge Health Tech Fund in Singapore, but also Modi is we want to measure how much of an impact we make globally, both within the U.S. but also LMIC countries. Because if we can figure this out with LMICs, we can launch this anywhere we want to, right? So if we can democratize, which everybody says, oh, we're democratizing cancer, like we really have this goal. And we have this metrics that we measure. How many lives did we impact? And how many lives did we impact in those countries, right? Because it's the only way that I think they're ever going to get access to targeted therapies is just through AI. It's scalable, it's fast, it's off an H&E slide. It doesn't require, really the personnel to run an NGS type test. So I think over time with EGFR, I think that's a really good marker. IDH and brain cancer is a fantastic marker that we have a really great initial test for. That could potentially be the first CDX type test as the IDH one for us at Imagenomix. We've been working on that for a long time, just because that's our passion project. And Mattia and Dan's a neurosurgeon, Dan Oringer at NYU, and Mattia is the neuropathologist. So that one I could see potentially being a CDX just based on our initial data with that. It's already around the 95% AUC mark. And they don't have an IHC really for IDH2, right?
Mm.
So that one I could see progressing pretty quickly. And that would be a really neat milestone to have the first type of CDX, especially in the brain cancer world that gets ignored a lot.
Mm. And so I would imagine as well with your global goals, being an AI native heavy company with a lack of personnel requirement, especially in remote locations or to be in country where you're trying to deliver a service, compared to your previous role where you would have come up against these challenges. Oh, if I want to, I want to operate in this country, we have to be able to, have to build a lab there. The world is your oyster, right? With the technology you're building, surely the shackles are off. It's just, let's go.
Yeah, and so aside from cost, right, which is the number one limiting factor, second is time for them. The
Yeah.
third is not sending enough tissue, or the blood gets QNS because you have to ship it on ice and it comes in, it's warm. That's a problem. The other is shipping biologics out of a country, right? You don't have to do that with Imagenomix.
Yeah.
All you need is the H&E slide image.
Yeah.
You can upload it we're building a portal now. We anticipate our own portal be done in October. So by October, pathologists globally can access the Imagenomix portfolio and upload their slides and get a rule in, rule out. This is not going to be your diagnostic, so make sure nobody's prescribing based on that, right? But it should give them, if you're ruling in, we say, hey, high likelihood of an EGFR KRAS, run a confirmatory test, you PCR, NGS, you can run small panel NGS, you can run a single panel PCR. Those are cheap, right? They're inexpensive. That could be done within the next year. And that's where you start to see a lot of the cancers and hopefully starting to subside, right? Or a lot more cures, if you will, or people going into remission. So, that's our hope and goal.
That's awesome. Travis, what's your outlook on the diagnostics omics market for 2026? How do you think the landscape is, and where are we going?
Oh, it's still young. I mean, you see these, Page and Path AI being purchased. There's going to be a lot more consolidation over the next 2 years. They're still trying to figure out where AI fits, who to trust, and then how to use it, right?
Yeah.
How do we utilize this best to advance our healthcare system? And that's still a question that everybody's up in the air on.
This has been super fascinating, Travis, to hear what you guys are doing, where you sit, and the benefits of the product you can bring, and ultimately how AI is helping to achieve a more precise future, which is what we should all be hoping for. I'm really excited to follow the milestones that come up and what you guys are going to achieve. It really feels like you'll see a hockey stick at some point. It feels like that's quite natural. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing the insights. This was awesome.
Yeah, David, thanks so much for having us. And we appreciate what you're doing out there and, spreading the message for us and others. It's something that we really need people to have more awareness around. And eventually, we hope that patient advocacy groups can start announcing that Imagenomix has things for brain, lung, breast that are easily accessible to people that couldn't afford these in the past.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Travis.
Yeah. David, thanks so much. Appreciate it.